Good morning, everyone. Welcome to our Climate Action Week question and answer session, where we will be answering your questions on climate action and the Scottish Government's plans for net zero. Today, we are thrilled to be joined not only by our online audience, but by an in-person audience of pupils and educators as well. So welcome to all of you, and thank you so much for coming today. Originally, as you might remember, we had planned to host this question and answer session in September, but we had to postpone. That's all right, though, because today marks the beginning of COP28, which is an international conference on climate change attended by heads of state from all over the world. You might remember COP26 that was hosted in Glasgow in 2021. You might also remember from Climate Action Week in September that net zero means that the amount of greenhouse gas emissions that we put into the atmosphere and the amount that we'll be able to take out of the atmosphere will add up to zero. They'll balance. Scotland aims to be a net zero country by 2045. That's coming sooner than we think. So to answer your questions today, I'm very pleased to welcome Ms. Màiri McAllan, who's the Cabinet Secretary for Transport, Net Zero and Just Transition for the Scottish Government. Welcome.
Good morning. Thank you.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Would you like to
yes, of course.
say a few things to
Thank
say
you
hello?
so much for the introduction,
No
and hello to everybody in the room and hello to everybody online. I'm really pleased that we've managed to do this today after, as you said, having to postpone from Climate Week. I'm really excited to get a chance to basically stop talking at you at some point and start listening and to take all your questions, which is the purpose of today. But as has been said, climate change and the connected problem of nature loss, I believe, and I think a lot of you will probably agree, is probably the single biggest long-term problem that the whole of the world is facing. And it can feel insurmountable at times because there's so many things that we all need to do as individuals, that we need our governments to do, and that we need big business and corporation to do as well. But it is so important, and that's why here in Scotland we have to do everything that we can, as well as using all the influence that we have on the world stage to try and make other countries do the same. And you mentioned COP28, the First Minister is at COP28 in Dubai today. We'll be swapping over. I'm going on Saturday and he's coming back to do the Scottish budget. But that's about Scotland going onto the world stage and saying, look what we are doing, you need to do it too. What can we learn from each other to make this as fast as possible? But anyway, I'll leave it there. Really looking forward to your questions.
Brilliant. Would we like to have our first question then?
Fantastic. So first we have Riley from Gracemount Primary who's going to ask a question.
Pupils from Gracemount Primary would like to know, what is your main concern about climate change in Scotland?
Thank you for the question.
So I'll repeat the question just in case.
Yeah, of
Will I repeat the question? Right. The question is, pupils from Gracemount Primary would like to know, what is your main concern about climate change in Scotland?
Where is Gracemount? Where are you? Are you from Edinburgh?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I think, really good question. I think my biggest concern about it is that for so long we didn't know what the industrial processes that we had developed over so many years. We didn't realise the problems that they were creating in our atmosphere. So we developed all these ways of living our lives, which involved the burning of fossil fuels and activities that just aren't good for our planet. So if we think about the way we travel in our petrol and diesel cars, if we think about how we heat our homes through burning gas or oil, we basically built emissions into our lives because we found all these new ways of doing it as part of the Industrial Revolution. But now we know that they really are very harmful for our planet, so we have to try and reverse all that. And I think that's the biggest challenge. It's how widespread throughout the way we live our lives the issues are, and how not everybody has the same capacity to make the changes. So, for example, right now we're trying to encourage people to move away from using gas boilers or oil, but at the same time we know we're going through an energy crisis where some people are really struggling to pay their bills. So it's the scale of it, the spread of it, and also how differently different parts of our community are able to respond. I think that's the biggest problem.
Okay,
thank you.
Okay. So next we have Emma Grace, who is from Balmalloch Primary. If you'd like to ask your question, thank you.
Pupils from Bumalik Primary would like to know what have you been doing so far to stop climate change?
So the question is, pupils from Balmalik Primary would like to know, what have you been doing so far to stop climate change?
Thanks. Emma?
Yeah.
Thank you, Emma. So I think you may have mentioned, you definitely mentioned our 2045 target to be net zero. We're already halfway there. So from 1990 to where we are now, we've already managed to get about 50% of the way down. And some of the really important early actions that helped to drive that were closing coal-fired power stations. That was a really major contributor, and we made some big changes to the way that we handle waste, because that was a huge emitter as well. So they were big chunky actions that got us quite far along the road. More recently, we've been doing a whole series of things. Again, it goes back to Riley's question about how there's so many things, there's no one answer. So we've been planting a huge amount of forests in Scotland, because we know that trees absorb carbon from the atmosphere and lock it away. We've been protecting the forests that we already have. We have a rainforest on the west coast of Scotland that I think not everybody knows that we have. We've been protecting it. We've been investing in peatland restoration. Again, when I first came into this job, I didn't realise how important peat was to the climate, but it's basically in our soils. It's developed over thousands of years, and when it's nice and wet, it will absorb carbon and lock it away. But in Scotland, a lot of it is dried out, so we've been investing money in trying to re-wet that. We've been banning single-use plastics. That was one of the most important things that we did. Forks and plates and cups, etc. They've been banned. We've switched to renewables, so you'll see lots of turbines going up around where you live. We're producing hydrogen. We have the world's biggest offshore wind leasing rounds under development in Scotland. So all of these things, a combination of them is what we've been doing.
Thank you.
Thanks.
And our third question.
So our third question is from Harris from Juniper Green.
Pupils from Liberton Primary would like to know, what are you doing to make transport more eco-friendly?
Thanks, Harris.
So the question is, pupils from Liberton Primary would like to know, what are you doing to make transport more eco-friendly?
So it's a really important question, because as some of you might know from the learning that you've been doing on this in schools, transport is the biggest emitter in Scotland, closely followed by the way that we heat our buildings. So some of the most important things we've been doing are trying to get people to switch from a fossil fuel car over to an electric car. So we've spent quite a lot of money investing in a public network of charging points. So Scotland in the UK has the second biggest number of charging points outside of London. So we've made quite good progress, but there's still a long way to go. Another thing we have been doing is we've spent a lot of money on trying to create electric buses. We have a manufacturer of electric buses in Scotland at Alexander Dennis, and we have now 550 new electric buses on the roads. So sometimes if you're in the city, you might, particularly in Glasgow, they've been really good at adopting this. You might notice that the buses are not heavy and dirty and belching out smoke, etc. We have tried to make public transport more accessible and affordable so that more people can make the switch, including all of you at school, under 22s, being able to travel free on buses, and over 60s and disabled people being able to do so as well. I'm trying to think what else. Oh, we created a low emission zone in Glasgow, Edinburgh, Dundee and Aberdeen, where polluting vehicles won't be allowed in. Glasgow's already they've already moved into the enforcement stage. Edinburgh's going to do so at the start of next year. So lots of activities, but a huge amount still to do. Oh, I should say, sorry, active travel is another really important thing we've been trying to do, creating more opportunities for, particularly in cities and in towns, people to take a short journey, not by car, but if they can, on foot or on bike or wheeling in another way. Thanks, Adam.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so now we have Oliver from Karen Shore Primary.
Pupils from Bell Baxter High School would like to know, why is there a lack of action towards stopping larger corporations from polluting the planet when they are the ones doing the most damage?
So our fourth question is, pupils from Bell Baxter High School would like to know, Why is there a lack of action towards stopping large corporations from polluting the planet when they are the ones doing the most damage?
I think it's a really good question, Oliver. It's something that I sometimes feel like I'm hitting my head off a brick wall with a little bit, because, you know, we talked about how big a problem it is, and then we think about, well, we're just one person, what difference can we make? And although we can, I do think that governments and big companies have the biggest responsibility to make the change. I don't know how much you learn about devolution and things like that in school, but in Scotland you've got two governments. You've got us in Edinburgh, and there's a government in London. They have power over company law and over tax. Those are probably two of the biggest levers that you have to try and make companies do the right thing. But there's other things we can do. There's this principle called polluter pays. So you can develop policies which say that we're going to develop this, but we're going to make the people or the companies who are polluting pay the price for it. And we were for a while developing something called a deposit return scheme, which was about trying to collect bottles and cans, etc. And the producers of those plastic bottles were intended to pay for the scheme. So that was an example of how we were trying to do that. But another thing we can do is we're all consumers. So we can use our power to only buy or consume the products that we see are developed responsibly or by companies who are making the biggest effort to reduce emissions. Thanks, Oliver.
Okay, our next question is from Miriam from Juniper Green.
Pupils from Carbridge Primary, a rural school in the Highlands, would like to know, what is the government doing to make sure councils can afford the changes that will make their schools net zero by 2024, especially for rural schools like theirs?
So the question is, pupils from Carbridge Primary, which is a rural school in the Highlands, would like to know, what is the government going to do to make sure councils can afford the changes that will make their schools net zero by 2045, especially for rural schools like theirs?
Thank you, Miriam. It's a really good question. So I work really closely with all local authorities in Scotland and with their umbrella body, which we call COSLA, but it's just all the local authorities come together with representatives. Because we understand that whilst, you know, the government in Edinburgh and wherever we are can set national rules, actually local authorities know best of all what is right for their area and what, you know, their responsibility, as you rightly point out, they're responsible for schools in the area. So we have lots of funding, central funding that goes into councils. That's really under pressure just now. All councils are feeling it, we're feeling it, public finances are in a very difficult position. But we do fund both centrally and for specific climate actions, councils, so that they can support schools. I think that you mentioned the fact that you're rural. I think that rural primary schools and high schools have got a really important part to play, because if you think about those all those actions that I talked about at the start, the tree planting, the growing, the peatland restoration, the protection of our natural world. I'm from a rural area, and I see that that's some of the biggest assets that we have in rural Scotland to contribute. One other thing we're doing, working with councils, is we're setting up what we're calling a climate intelligence service. So it will be a liaison between government and local authorities, so that we can share all of our learning, share all of our intelligence, try and not avoid any duplication, and basically make the transition quicker. But there's really nothing that, you know, you can't do in a rural school that you could do elsewhere. In fact, maybe you've got greater scope to contribute.
There's a follow-up part of that question, and that is, what do you think a net zero school would look like?
Well, that's a really good question.
That's a tricky one.
Yeah, no, it's a good one. I think, so first of all, I suppose running with a heating system that's renewable, so that will be either district heating, probably most likely district heating, although in some cases it will be ground source or air source heat pumps. I see solar panels and green space, lots of outdoor learning, pupils feeling empowered to be in the natural world and to grow their own food and to perhaps even consume it in their own canteens. Recycling being something that's really well embedded into the school community, and maybe even stretching out beyond the school grounds to looking at how transport works and if more kids can walk to school rather than take vehicles and those who do have to travel, because I'm sure in rural where you are, you probably have to travel quite far, with electric buses and things like that.
Great. Have our next question, please.
So next we have Joseph, who's from Dunblane High School.
Yeah. Pupils from Bell Baxter High School would like to know why schools aren't provided with funding to purchase solar panels.
So the question is, pupils from Bill Baxter High School would like to know why are schools not provided with funding to purchase solar panels? And just before you answer, there's a follow-up bit here that says that pupils are aware that new builds are installed with solar panels in a lot of cases. But I think what they're asking about here is that there doesn't seem to be action at the moment to install them in older buildings. And at Bell Baxter, they're currently in the process of trying to get solar panels for their school, but they are looking to see if there is any government support, and if so, where can they find it, please?
Okay, thank you. That's a good question, especially as I just mentioned that a net zero school would have solar panels. So firstly, you're absolutely right. We're trying to make an effort to make sure that new building in Scotland, whether it's school estates, domestic, commercial, that we're not missing the opportunity to do renewable heating, solar panels, EV charging points, because one thing that people always say to me is, Màiri, for goodness sake, why are we building new properties without everything that we need? So we're doing that. When it comes to existing buildings, so your council are responsible for the school building, but there is a fund, and it's called the Public Sector Decarbonisation Fund. I will try and find exactly the details and get it. I don't think it's to your school, it's that you were asking on behalf of someone, but we can get it to them. This is money that comes from government to the council, and which I think the school could make a bid to the council in order to access. So I'll definitely try and get that to you.
Oh, that would be fantastic. Thank you.
No, not at all.
Okay. So next we have Angus from Caronshaw Primary.
Pupils from Gracemount Primary are aware that pupils across the country are learning about sustainability, are taking action on climate change and care for their future. They would like to know, what are adults in power doing to help?
So the question is, pupils from Gracemount Primary are aware that pupils across the country are learning about sustainability, are taking action on climate change and care for their future. And they'd like to know, what are adults in power doing to help?
I'm sorry, I didn't catch your name.
Angus.
Angus. Thank you, Angus. Yeah, it's a really good question. I suppose it's similar to the one about what are big corporations doing. It's funny for me because I'm only 30, so probably of all my colleagues in the cabinet, I can remember most of all what it's like to be, maybe not in primary, that's a bit of a distant memory for me, but certainly to be in school and to feel really passionate about changing things, but maybe not always knowing exactly how to make the difference, and you do look to your governments to do that. So I mentioned one of the initial questions, I think it was what have you done so far? So hopefully you heard that. I think we're now moving into this stage where some of what we need to do now are the hardest bits, because they go right to the heart of the way we live our lives, the way we travel, the way we heat our homes, what we consume. But I am currently, I suppose, well, not suppose, as the person in Scotland who's responsible for leading this and for supporting the First Minister in that, I'm currently producing a climate change plan, which will build on everything that I said we've done to date, which looks right across our economy and our society, and develops plans in each of them for exactly what we need to do to lower our emissions towards our targets. And so we're just developing that right now. I will publish it shortly. It will go to the Scottish Parliament. The committees there will go through it with a fine-tooth comb and make sure it's as good as it can be, and then it will come back to the government and we will publish it. So I'm trying to set that overarching plan for Scotland, and then it will be up to us all to work together to implement it. Thanks, Angus.
Now we have Freddy from Royal High School, Edinburgh.
Hello.
Hi, Freddy.
A pupil from Locknell Primary has been learning about the impact of palm oil plantations in the environment and has presented to her class about its impact. Is the government encouraging councils to consider buying ingredients with no palm oil for the schools, so children know they are not eating palm oil products?
Our question is, a pupil from Loughnell Primary has been learning about the impact of palm oil plantations on the environment and has presented to her class about its impact. Is the government encouraging councils to consider buying ingredients without palm oil for schools so that children know they are not eating palm oil products? And just to add a bit of context, we know that this question comes from a passionate young activist who wants to raise awareness so that pupils, her fellow pupils, can make informed choices about what they buy and what they eat, especially at school.
Yeah, well, first of all, that is just wonderful that a pupil is investigating this issue and I suppose leading a campaign on it.
Mm-hmm.
She or he?
She.
Yeah, she,
Mm-hmm.
I thought you said she. That's just wonderful. I think she's absolutely right. Palm oil is both in its origin and the way it's extracted and the impact that has on the environment, very, very damaging. It's also really unhealthy.
Mm-hmm.
So already canteens would not be allowed to cook with palm oil because it's so high in saturated fat that it would breach nutritional rules that are already in place. It might be in products though that are already made, and I think that every effort should be made to try and reduce that. In terms of what the government are doing, we last year passed an act called the Good Food Nation Act, and it was my colleague Màiri who delivered that. She looks after farming and food production, and one of the main points of that was to try and make sure that more people could more easily access local, healthy and nutritional foods. And it had some they're not rules because we can't impose on councils. It wouldn't be right for us to do that. We need to work together. Mm-hmm. But it had guidance on how to support school canteens and councils to procure food locally, and of course healthily. So I would expect, anything with a high palm oil content to be caught by that.
Mm-hmm. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Great.
So next we have Juno, who is from Wardy Primary.
Pupils from Westerton Primary are very aware about the problems of littering and importance and challenges of litter picking, and would like to know, could the government issue an eco day where all the schools in Scotland would litter pick in their local community and make this part of the Scottish curriculum?
I particularly like this question because eco schools is particularly close to my own heart. But the question is, pupils from Westerton Primary are very aware about the problems of litter and the importance and challenges of litter picking. And they would like to know if the government could issue an eco day where all the schools in Scotland could litter pick in their local community, and could this be made part of the Scottish curriculum?
Do you know, I love this question. It's really good, and actually I think just yes would be the answer. I think eco day is a super idea, and I think we already have an outdoor learning day, which I think is in the spring. So hopefully you'll all be taking part in that. But I think the eco day and a litter picking day done nationally, which with all schools getting involved, is a superb idea. So if you don't mind, I might steal it. We already have a national litter strategy, which has dates by which we hope to have reversed people's approach to littering in Scotland and to have made recycling more embedded. So I see absolutely no reason why a school eco day couldn't be part of that. In terms of embedding it in the curriculum, we have an approach in Scotland which says that we don't tell teachers what to teach. The government doesn't prescribe the education, but sets the teachers in the room will know far more about this than I do. But I have sort of, I suppose, wanted in the past to be able to say, yeah, let's make climate change part of the curriculum, but it's right that it's absolutely up to our teachers. We just need to help empower them and support them to be able to do these kind of things in schools, because I know they'll want to.
With the entitlement to learning for sustainability, every child will get they will get sustainable development education as part of the curriculum that way too.
That was recently updated, I understand. Yes.
There's a bit of follow-up to this question about an eco day.
Yeah.
One of the things that the pupils at Westerton are particularly concerned about is they need support to get equipment and time. And they're also concerned that their efforts for litter picking don't really solve the problem at its root. I mean, I would say that litter picking does more than you think it does, but I think that they're maybe a bit discouraged for doing a litter pick and then seeing it come back again.
And I think that is one of the things that is, we want to call ourselves environmental campaigners. That is something that you feel sometimes a little defeated, because again it's that issue of this is such a big problem and we're just one little person, but no one is too small to make a big difference. I think that was Greta Thunberg I was quoting, but we all have a part to play, no matter your age. But actually, when we come together in groups, that's when we're most powerful, which I think is why Eco Day, with all the schools working together, not only makes a big difference in terms of the litter that could be collected, but also says to Scotland, this is what our young people care about. And all of you adults that continue to drop litter or not be concerned with the environment, you better realise that young people care about this, because it's their future. So I think it could be really powerful. Yep. And in terms of equipment, if you should contact your local MSPs if you have any problems. My niece, she's in primary school, and at the start of the summer, I said, 6 weeks off, what are you going to do? And she said, well, I've contacted South Lanarkshire Council for a litter picker and some bags.
Amazing.
And I thought, that's just wonderful. And she could get it. So please don't ever be stuck. Contact your representatives and make sure they're helping you to get the equipment that you need.
Keep Scotland Beautiful also have a network of community hubs that we have given equipment to. So you can look on our website and see if there's one near you. I do know that local authorities tend to have a set that they can loan to schools and individuals as well. But I would also just take one moment to point out that anyone who thinks that one piece of, picking up a few pieces of litter won't make any difference should think of it the other way around. The litter problem has been caused by lots of people only dropping one piece of litter, and look at what a huge problem it is. And if everyone picks up one piece of litter, you'll make just as much impact. It's just that you won't see it because you're making a problem disappear. So one person can really have a huge impact. Thank you very much. Can we have our next question, please, Nicola?
So our next question is asked by Zach from Royal High School, Edinburgh. Great.
Hiya. Pupils from Overton Primary would like to know, do you have plans to create more green spaces?
But the question is, pupils from Liberton Primary would like to know, do you have plans to create more green spaces?
Good question, thank you, Zach. So yes is the answer. I should say that whenever you hear me talking about climate change, I will always mention nature at the same time, because I think sometimes we can get a little bit caught up in just emissions reduction, but actually supporting our natural world and the species abundance and ecosystem health is as equally important. They both require each other, and when they're both under pressure, that worsens the situation. So yes, in our planning system, we already have rules where if the developer is looking to develop, they have to protect green space, and they also have to demonstrate how they will provide it as part of their development. That's just a planning system, though. On a bigger scale, we have some commitments that my colleague Lorna Slater, that works in my portfolio, she is currently working on a commitment to make 30% of nature protected, 30% of Scotland protected for nature by 2030. And we are bringing in one new national park before the end of the Parliament. That's just opened for interest, and we've got lots of areas around Scotland that want to be the next national park. The other thing that we're working on is creating what we call nature networks, which is this idea that rather than Scotland having areas of the natural world which is functioning really well and then being completely cut off from another piece, we connect all of that through the country so that species can move well throughout the country, and so that the natural world basically can undulate and move as it needs to. So all of those things together are all about good green space for our planet, but also so that we can spend time in it and enjoy it.
Thank you.
Thanks, Zach.
And our final question this morning is from Keris from Wardy Primary School.
Pupils from Màiri Primary School and many other schools would like to know, what can we do in schools to help stop climate change?
So I know we got this question many, many times when we asked schools to submit questions they would like you to answer. This one is from Wardy Primary School and many other schools, and they would like to know, what can we do in schools to help stop climate change?
Really good question, Keris, thank you. I think first of all, taking part in days like this and with support from Keep Scotland Beautiful is really important. We've talked about a lot of actions today that schools can take, from outdoor learning to having growing space if you're able, to making sure that recycling is something that's really well embedded in your school. All of that is really important. I think also, I think you're role models. I think most of you, some of you are representatives from high schools today, but I think most of the primary school kids are P6s and 7s. So you're the senior people in your school. So you can be role models for, yes, the younger children in the school, but also you can be role models in your community. So as well as doing everything you can in your own school, working with your teachers and your staff, go out into your communities and say, this is what we are doing, this is what we expect of the businesses in our high streets, the people who use our spaces, and we all want to work together to try and make the places that we live the best that they can be, and the most eco-friendly that they can be. And I should say one thing that we've done, because we really value the voices of young people, is we ran a citizens' assembly on climate a couple of years ago, and we invited people from all over Scotland randomly to come and be part of it and to tell the government what they thought we should do. And as part of that, we had a children's parliament, and some of the best ideas that came out of that were from the children's parliament. So you are all so well, so knowledgeable about all of this. You care so much because you realise it's your future. So just, keep going, keep working together, keep believing that you can make a difference. And I have no doubt that you will. So, thank you.
Brilliant. I think we have time for one more question, which is mine. I have to keep my own question in there. And that is, how did you become a Cabinet Secretary for Net Zero Transport and Just Transition? And what would you say to any young person who would like to follow a path like yours?
Thank you. Sometimes I ask myself how I became the Cabinet Secretary for Transport and Net Zero. So, first of all, I went to Biggar Primary and High School. I don't know if some people from Edinburgh might know it, just down in South Lanarkshire. And when I left school, I went on to be a lawyer, which was what I wanted to do from when I was primary 5, I think. And law and politics are really very closely connected in a lot of ways. And I think from a young age, I was an activist within my party, and that's basically how I came to seek election and to be here, and what a privilege it is. I mean, I would say that for anybody considering getting into formal politics, yes, but also just campaigning. It's just about understanding, first of all, yourself, what you care about and what matters to you, and equipping yourself with knowledge about the subject, which you're all doing by being, for example, part of this, and come together, because there's strength in numbers. Find people who are like-minded with you, and then have the confidence to go out into the world and tell people that that's what you believe in and that you think it's right, and know that your voice is always worth being heard and that you deserve the space to express yourself. And then once, if you succeed in that, you have the great privilege of looking after lots of other people and trying to make their voices heard.
Brilliant. Thank you so much for your time today, and for your willingness to listen to pupils' concerns and to answer their questions with so much detail. Is there anything else that you'd like to say to all these young people gathered here today and online?
I think I summed it up actually in the last couple of points, which is just to say, I think first of all, I know, because I feel it myself, how big the problem feels, and how little we as individuals can feel. But I think as you put it, if you change how you're thinking about it, you can very quickly see what a difference that you can make, either alone or, most importantly, together. And the bottom line is, this is all of your futures. We talked about what we would want to see in the future. My hope is that by the time you are my age, that we will have made a really significant difference in turning the tide on emissions, changing all those behaviours that we didn't know we were doing the wrong thing, but we developed it over time. So if we can all work together, I've no doubt we'll start to make a difference on that. It will be better for us here. And then there are also lots of young people throughout the world whose countries are much more exposed to the impacts of climate change, for whom it will make the difference of a life well lived or not.
That's right.
So we're all in this together. Genuinely, the whole world is, and we all have a part to play. So thank you so much.
Brilliant. Thank you again for everyone who participated here today, people who joined us here at the Edinburgh Climate Change Institute, especially to those pupils who submitted a question to be asked. And I hope that you have all learned a great deal today about climate action. I know I certainly have. Please have a look at our website for future live lessons on other different topics coming up in the new year. But I'd like to give a round of applause to everyone. And so thank you again. That concludes our live broadcast. Thank you everyone for joining us online. I hope to see you again very soon. Bye for now.
Bye.